Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video I will compare the Tamron 17-28mm f2.8 with the Sony 16-35mm f4. Both are two very popular wide-angle zoom lenses for the Sony E-mount system. But which lens is really better? We will find out in a moment. The Tamron 70-28 is a newer lens that features a fast constant f2.8 aperture in a very compact and lightweight body. It is constructed of high-grade plastic and weighs a surprisingly lightweight 420 grams. The Tamron has a fairly short zoom range, stopping at 28mm rather than the more typical 35mm of most ultra-wide zooms. This shorter range allows the lens to stay very compact while keeping that large f2.8 aperture. This lens does not extend while zooming, as all zooming is done internal in the other lens barrel. It features also a 67mm filter thread. The Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4 was the first ultra-wide zoom for the full-frame E-mount system and is constructed with a full metal exterior, a 72mm filter thread and extend while zooming. The Sony lens does have a built-in optical stabilizer, while the 16-35mm is a full stop slower than the Tamron, is actually a slightly larger lens, in the same length as the Tamron when zoomed to the 35 position, but is a touch wider in diameter. When zoomed to the wide end, the Sony is about a centimeter or so longer than the Tamron. It weighs at 580 grams, around 23% heavier than the Tamron, despite the slower aperture. But what about the image and video quality? In the next minutes we will compare some images in landscape, low light and astro. We will also make a sharpness, video and autofocus test. So have fun! Okay, back on our side-by-side comparison. As always, I have used for every picture comparison here the same settings. The only difference here between these two pictures is the focal length, of course. You see here on the left side the Tamron with 17mm and on the right side the Sony with 16mm. As you can see, between 17 and 16mm there is not a big difference. I thought it would be much more difference between these two focal lengths here on the wide end. If we zoom in, we see here that the Tamron has slightly better image quality on the mid frame. Let's go to the edges. I don't know why the Sony picture here is so blurry. It could be the wind, but no, you see it here on the mountains here. The Tamron on the wide end, it's much sharper. Let's compare the longest end. This is the difference between 28mm and 35mm. And here we see, of course, a bigger difference. The Sony can zoom much more in. Let's go on 100%. Both looks good, but again, I think here the Tamron, again, it's the winner, but both are comparable here. Good, let's make a quick bokeh test. This is a bokeh that you get on the longest end with the Tamron and on the right side with the Sony. Of course, I've used the lowest aperture. That means with the Tamron, I've used the aperture of 2.8 and the Sony lens an aperture of f4. And that's the difference. Let's zoom in on the bokeh balls. And I think both are comparable, but on the edges I think the Sony lens makes a more rounder bokeh balls here, and the sharpness on the face here is more or less comparable. Good, let's make a quick sharpness test. For this test I've used the widest end, that means for the Tamron 17mm and on the Sony the 60mm. As we saw on the first pictures, both focal lengths are here comparable. There is not so much difference between these two. Let's zoom in. Okay, on the mid frame, both looks very good. Let's go to the edges. Both are still sharp, but I think this Tamron, it's a little bit sharper here. but both are comparable. In the middle, I don't see any difference here. Let's switch to 24mm. Okay, that looks good. Both. The first look, I can't see any difference. Let's zoom in. Here again. I think maybe the Sony here is a bit sharper here. Let's go to the edges. Oh yes, look at this. The Sony on 24 is sharper. You see it here and here. Much more contrast and sharpness on the Sony lens here. Okay, let's compare 28mm. Okay, on the first look, both looks identical. Again, let's zoom in. The mid frame, I can't see any difference. Both looks the same. Let's go to the edges. Okay, you see it here. The Sony, again, the winner here on the edges. Much more sharpness. More contrast here. But the mid frame and the middle, both are identical. And of course, I've not mentioned it before, I've set the focus point every time manually. And you see it here, the middle are always the same and we have differences in the corners. But okay, this was the longest focal length here on the Tamron. To make it also comparable with the longest focal length on both lenses, I switch here on the Sony lens to 35mm. Good, we have now the longest focal lengths on both lenses. Normally these are the weak points on the zoom lenses. Let's zoom in. The same picture, both lenses in the middle, extremely sharp, but let's go to the edges and here you see it. The Tamron is sharper than the Sony on the longest end. At the corners, the Tamron is better, but on the mid frame, again, both are sharp. Okay, the next is a low light comparison. I've used here on both lenses the widest focal length. That means on Tamron the 17 on the and 16mm on the Sony. I've used an ISO of 1250 and I've done a long exposure with 2 seconds and I've set the aperture on 20 to get some sun stars here. On the first look, both are comparable. Maybe the Sony here is a slightly darker, but not so much. Both looks quite good. Let's zoom in. And here you see the difference at the sun stars. But the sharpness and low light, it's quite identical. You can read everything here. So far so good. Let's switch to some astro tests. Okay, for the first test I've used again the widest focal length. That means on the Tamron 17 and on the Sony the 16mm. I've used an ISO for both lenses of 1250 and I've made a long exposure of 13 seconds and I've used also the lowest aperture for the Sony f4 and for the Tamron f2.8. And you see directly the Tamron can capture much more light with the 2.8. That is the difference between 2.8 and f4. Let's zoom in. It looks very good, but you see much more stars here on the Tamron. But both lenses can capture the stars very well. Okay, if we switch more to the corners, the stars are not round anymore, but this is a wide angle problem. But in the mid frame, Both looks good. Let's make a test with 24mm. Here again, I've used the same focal length, 24mm, the same ISO. I've set it on 1250. I've made a long exposure of 13 seconds, and I've used the aperture Tamron 2.8 and 4 on the Sony lens. And of course, the Sony lens is darker. If you want to get the same result like a Tamron, you have to pump up your ISO on 3200. And then you get a comparable result. Let's zoom in. The stars are round. Looks very good. But of course, if we go to the edges, they are not round anymore. But what I see is surprisingly good on both lenses. So what about the ISO? You see directly here, the Sony has much more grain here than the Tamron. But the picture, of course, is still usable. It's a great performance of both lenses. That means you can use both lenses also for astrophotography. Okay, on the next part, you will see a quick video, zoom, and an autofocus test. See you later. Welcome back. It's not so easy to say which lens is the best. Both lenses has their pros and cons. On the one hand, the Tamron offers a great overall package with sharp images and a constant f2.8 aperture. On the other hand, the Sony offers a larger focal length, a higher quality body, and it's also stabilized. Personally, I tend to use the Sony lens during the day when I'm outside in the nature. For landscape shots, I use the aperture between f7.1 and 11 anyway, so I don't miss the f2.8 there. I use the Tamron almost exclusively in the evening or for astrophotography. It all depends on what type of photographer you are. If you mainly shoot during the day, the Sony with a longer focal length range is a better choice. For all other applications, especially in low light, the Tamron really does a great job. It is very sharp and has an excellent image performance. Furthermore, it's lighter and cheaper. Feel free to write your comments which lens is your favorite. I would be very happy to hear your point of view. If you like this test, I would appreciate if you can leave a like and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.